God does not exist.
Okay.
We don't know what is going to happen after the death of the body. We don't know. The problem is not Christianity. The problem is the Christian. The problem is not Judaism. The problem is the Jew, and so on.
As far as the North Pole is from the South, we are bridging the knowledge gap from centuries past. We inspire you to find your true North. From Timbuktu to Alexandria, from the city of Johannesburg to New York, from the Zulus to the Dogon people, we are disrupting the knowledge economy. We are Sir Max Network.
True excellence cannot be sustained by duty alone. It can be sustained by love. That is why when love enters labor, it stops being just a task, but it becomes a sacred responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, love transformed effort into purpose, performance into service, and success into impact. Love is the invisible energy that turns ordinary work into a work of art and meaningful contribution. It's such, again, another special episode of Cemex Network. I'm so excited and I'm so happy that I get to sit with one of my favorite people. He's one of the pillars on which this podcast is built. He is the friend of the show. He's the legend, the iconic. He's back on the show by popular demand. He's the wisdom keeper of our time, a nucleus through which we connect to the world. He is in the upper echelons of the intellectual capital in the world. He's the shape of human consciousness, a storyteller, and an amazing orator. He's one of the top political analysts, not just in Africa, but throughout the world. Many people come and seek his opinion. I'm talking about Kgoroeadira Matshiqi. Welcome to the show, Gogo.
Kamako,
Tokoza. How have you been, Gogo?
I've been good. As I always say, one can always be better.
Yes.
But I've been good.
You have been good.
Yes.
We're so happy and we are so thrilled to talk to you once more. It's always shared joy and pleasure when we talk to you. In the previous episodes that we did, we have promised people some conversations and they keep on reminding me, when are those conversations happening? But I'm so happy that you made time for us to have a sit down again.
All I will say, Ntakwanda, all I will say is, be careful what you wish for.
100%. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you subscribe on our YouTube channel. I know that this is going to be a banger of an episode. Please just go on YouTube and look for Cemex Network there and subscribe. And what are we talking about today, Gogo?
You said.
Yes.
And I'm saying you said, so that they know it's your fault.
Okay.
You said we're talking about God.
Yeah. I want to make a prelude, sort of like, before we get into our conversation. There are two philosophers that I want to borrow from.
Okay.
As we lay the foundation for our conversation. The first one is Friedrich Nietzsche. And you know where I'm going.
Yes, I know.
Where he said, God is dead.
Yes.
Because you have killed him.
Yes.
But Ludwig also says, man created God in his own image. Today, I want us to talk about God. I won't say to you, or the idea of God.
Yes.
I won't say to you who is God, but I'll say to you what is God.
Yes.
So I'm just going to allow you, because the concept of God has divided the world more than uniting the world. So it's a conversation that we cannot avoid, no matter how much we try to be religiously correct, politically correct. It's one of those conversations that we cannot avoid. I don't even know where to start from. I'll just throw the ball to you and take it wherever you want. The concept of God, the idea of God, the understanding of God. Everyone who comes share their own view on God.
Well, before we start, let me greet everyone properly and say, peace be upon you. Kamako. Siyathokoza. Namaste. Shalom. Salam alaikum. So I hope I've covered almost everyone.
We hope so.
Well, your introduction, you talk about love. God is love. I will start there. The first thing we must remember is that God is love. But love is not God. God is love, but love is not God. We can come back to this point as we go along.
Yes.
Are you sitting properly?
I am, Gogo.
And are you holding on to your chair?
I'm holding on. I'm actually sipping my coffee to make sure that I'm okay.
Hold on to your chair tightly. Because the first thing I want to tell you is that God does not exist. Are you still holding on to your chair?
Please say that again, Gogo.
God does not exist.
Okay.
So that is the first thing I want to tell you. The second thing I want to tell you is God exists.
Okay.
So the first thing I'm telling you is that God does not exist. The second thing is God exists. So these are the two things I want us to start with.
Okay.
Now, Ntakwande, let us say you do not believe God exists. Does the existence of God depend on you? Or let's come to the second thing. The second thing I said, God does not exist. So the question is, if God exists, does that depend on whether you believe God exists or not? Let's say God exists.
Okay.
Does the existence of God depend on whether you believe God exists or not? So that's our starting point. God exists. Then we ask the question, if God exists, does God's existence depend on what you believe? Does it depend on whether you believe God exists or not? In other words, if God exists and you do not believe God exists, will God not exist just because you believe God does not exist? The second thing, God exists. Same question. If God does not exist, will you believing that God exists make God to exist? That's the question. So those are the two questions I want us to start with. If God exists, that you believe God does not exist, will that make God not to exist? Question one. Two, If God does not exist, if you believe God exists, will that make God exist? Are we still together?
We're still
Dr.
together.
Gwenda?
Yes.
Or maybe I should repeat this part. We start by saying God exists. If you believe God does not exist, your believing God does not exist, will it change the fact that God exists? Will that make God not to exist?
No.
No. If God does not exist, will your believing God exists make God exist?
No.
Are we still together?
Yes.
What do you believe? Does God exist or not? And I will tell you what I believe.
Yeah. I don't believe in anything, but I know there's a level of knowing that I attribute to the existence of the higher power of God, of the infinite intelligence. So, but to people who are watching the show, to simplify, I do believe there is the higher power. There is the universe. There's a force that orchestrates how our life goes.
Okay. So you believe God exists and you express your belief in terms of your belief that there is a higher power.
Yes.
So God is a higher power.
Yes.
Is God the higher power or the highest power?
The highest power.
Okay.
Yes.
So God is the highest power.
Yes.
I believe God exists. But intellectually, I struggle with the idea that God exists. So I believe God exists.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But intellectually, I struggle with the idea that God exists.
That's a beautiful way, but it takes someone special to coexist with I want this word, to coexist in harmony with the contradictions
Yes.
within him. Oh, that's interesting.
So, yes, I believe God exists, but intellectually, I struggle with the idea of the existence of God. But I believe God exists.
Yes.
In other words, it's a matter of faith. I have had to make a leap of faith. So my faith tells me that God exists. That's my faith. Now, if you want me to put a coherent intellectual argument in support of the idea that God exists, I will struggle. Because as I say, intellectually, I struggle with the idea that God exists, but I do believe that God exists.
So which of the two take precedence? Your
Well-
belief or your intellectuality?
Well, God gave us a brain. And we must not insult God by not using our brains. So for me, my intellect is a very important element of my spirituality. And my spirituality is a very important element of my intellect. So for me, you can't separate the two. And remember, we have said, you and I, several times that everything is connected. Therefore, the spiritual and the intellectual are also connected. And that is why I say my intellect is a very important element of my spirituality, and my spirituality is a very important element of my intellect. You can't separate the two. And that is why I say God gave us a brain. We must not insult God by not using our brain. Or our minds. We are called upon to honor God by using our brains or our minds. For now, I won't go into another thing I believe, that there's a difference between the brain and the mind. The brain being that physical thing inside your head. Your mind being a much more qualitative presence.
The mind is the function of the brain.
I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
You know why I'm saying that?
Yes.
We now have growing evidence that plants can think, but they don't have a brain. What that says, plants have a mind. You don't need a brain to have a mind. That's what I'm saying.
In fact, Gogo, 50 years back, just over 50 years back, medical studies revealed that our heart, 60% of our heart cells are actually neural cells.
Yes.
So it means our hearts can think.
Yes.
They have thought. So I agree 100% with you.
So I have not always believed in God, by the way.
Okay.
There's a time in my life when I was a materialist, a member of the Communist Party, a Marxist, Leninist, materialist. There was a time in my life I was that. So I've not always believed in the existence of God. And I've not always believed in God, because I do differentiate between believing God exists and believing in God.
True.
The two are not always the same thing. Now I believe not only in the existence of God, but I believe in God. What happened? I hear you asking.
Yes, 100%.
So there's a time when I can say I used to wear my intellect on my sleeve. And there was a time when my intellect, to me, was like the feathers of a peacock. I would strut my stuff, intellectual stuff, like a peacock, proud of its colorful feathers, and wore my intellect on my sleeve. Because many people think the fact that they don't believe in God is a sign of their intelligence. Many people believe that. I was like that myself. I used to think the fact that I do not believe in God is a sign of my intelligence. And therefore, wore my intellect or wore my intelligence like the feathers of a peacock. How do I find myself believing in God? So I grew up in the Anglican Church. I was baptized in the Anglican Church. And I was confirmed in the Anglican Church. And later, I find myself working for a Catholic school. And because of that, I find myself spending a lot of time, especially every first Friday of the month, in Regina Mundi in Soweto, which was our parish. And for 10 years, I taught at this Catholic school. Now, the day I went to the Catholic school, St. Matthew's, to apply for a teaching post, I'm given a form. And there's a part of the form where I must fill in my denomination. And I wrote atheist. I still got the job.
Interesting.
Because they were desperate. Because I was a maths and science teacher. And they needed a maths and science teacher. Some years after that, I go to a wedding at the Tamil temple here in Melrose. It's the wedding of a black Cuban man and a Tamil woman. So the wedding is at this Tamil temple in Melrose. Something incredible happens. As I said, I grew up in the Anglican Church. I end up working in the Catholic Church. From time to time, I go to mosques with my Muslim friends. But here's the thing. In the Anglican Church where I grew up, I never felt the presence of God. In the Catholic Church where I worked, I never felt the presence of God. In the mosque where I went with my Muslim friends, I never felt the presence of God. But something remarkable happens at this wedding, at the Tamil temple. I am sitting there. Little do I realize I'm no longer there. I have traveled. Next thing, someone taps me on the shoulder. And it's the monk in charge of the place. And he says to me, look, I would love you to stay, but everyone has left now. You are alone. What happened to me? For the first time, I felt the presence of God. Now you tell me, why did I not feel the presence of God in the Christian church? Why did I not feel the presence of God in a mosque? Why do I feel the presence of God in a Tamil temple? And later, I asked God the same question, but why? And God says, I am God. I am not a Christian. I am not a Jew. I am not a Muslim. I am not Hindu. I am God. I am not a man. I am not a woman. I am not Zulu. I am not Xhosa. I am not black. I am not white. I am not all these things you identify with. I am God. Full stop. And God says, that's the lesson. That's the lesson I was teaching you. When I made you feel or find my presence, not in the Christian church, not in a mosque, but in a Tamil temple. The lesson I was teaching you is that I am, I am God. I am not the things you have come to identify with religiously, culturally, racially, and so on. I am God. As a result, I say there are two kinds of God. There is God, full stop. And then there is a God of our creation. The God of our creation is created in our image. We are supposed to be created in God's image.
But we have created
But
God.
what we have done, we have created God in our image.
And that's the most popular God.
Well, that is not God. So the God who, for instance, hates those you hate. For instance, the God who hates homosexuals, like you. The God who hates Christians, like you. The God who hates Jews, like you. The God who hates Muslims, like you. The God who hates Hindus, like you. The God who hates white people, like you. The God who hates black people, like you. The God who hates women, like you. That is not God. That is the God of your creation. And that God is created in your image. That is not God. That is an idol. So this God who hates Christians, who hates homosexuals, who hates Zulus, who hates Muslims, who hates Jews, that is an idol you have created. That is not God.
So based on this beautiful narration that you have just given, Gogo, why does your intellectual struggle to believe God exists?
Well, it's a complicated thing. Because I'm saying to you, I believe God exists.
Yes.
Then I say, intellectually, I struggle with the idea of the existence of God. One of the things I must I must accept, is that what I'm talking about is a function of my evolution. In other words, I must accept I'm not as evolved as I should be. And that is why I still suffer this dichotomy. The dichotomy of believing that God exists, while at the same time saying to you, intellectually, I struggle with the idea that God exists. That is a function of my evolution. in the eternal journey of my spirit, I still have a long way to go.
Mm.
In other words, I have not reached in my eternal journey the level of understanding that will reconcile this dichotomy. So the fault is mine.
Yeah. But many people have suppressed the intellectual.
Yes.
In fact, most of the people, the religious people, they have suppressed, they have killed the intellectual side
Yes.
in pursuit of belief,
Yes.
which is so sad
Yes.
because I think it makes it so beautiful.
Yes.
Like you said, Gogo, God gave us the brains to think.
We
And
must
even
not
more.
insult God by not using our
Yes.
brains. The brain is a God-given gift, right, and so on.
One would say God has become a problem.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying God is a problem.
Okay.
Yes, I'm saying God has become a problem
Yes.
to this world
Yes.
because of the divisions in this world. And maybe you've answered the question because there are two gods: God, the creator, and the God that our creation.
Yes.
That at the center of human problems today is the idea of God.
At the center of that problem is religion.
Mm.
The idea that there's only one route that takes you to God.
Mm.
You have religions that insist that unless you are of that religion, you are not going to heaven, for instance. You have such religions that tell you that there's only one way, only one route, only one road that is going to take you to God. And that road, that way, is my religion. So you're right. And as far as I'm concerned, when I look at the different religions, I sometimes say the problem is not Christianity. The problem is the Christian. The problem is not Judaism. The problem is the Jew. The problem is not Islam. The problem is the Muslim. The problem is not Ubungoma. The problem is Isangoma, or the ones who subscribe to Ubungoma. The problem is not Buddhism. The problem is the Buddhist. Because if you look at the religion and how we practice it, at the core of each religion is the idea that God is love, is the idea of loving thy neighbor. That is at the core of every religion, except Satanism, that God is love. So the problem, as I say, are not the religions themselves. The problem are the adherents. Hence I say, the problem is not Christianity. The problem is the Christian. The problem is not Judaism. The problem is the Jew, and so on. In our case, remember what happens to us. We are removed from our conception of God. the Europeans come here. They come here to Africa. They do godless things, and they claim to be doing them in the name of God. Colonialism is godless. And the things that were done during colonialism are godless. And they pretend that when they came here, they found people who did not believe in God, who therefore were godless. Now, remember, the first thing they took from us is our humanity. They start by saying, if you are not European, you are not human. Of course, if you are not human, I can visit all manner of pain and cruelty upon you because you are not human. But more importantly, you are godless. Because you are godless, I can visit upon you the crime of colonialism and so on. They found our ancestors believing in a God. And they do the godless thing of removing us from God. I won't even say from our God. Now, Dagwand, you may have seen a tweet that Donald Trump sent day before yesterday.
Yes, I saw it.
And the insulting reference to Allah. That made me very sad. You know why? Because I thought what is missing is that whether the God you mock is Allah, it doesn't matter what you call the God you're mocking. Whether it's Allah, whether it's God, whether you call God Vishnu, Krishna, it doesn't matter what you call God. Brahman, when you mock Brahman, when you mock Vishnu, when you mock Krishna, when you mock Allah, you are mocking the same God. So Trump, in his foolishness, thinks he is mocking the God of the Muslims when he mocks God in that tweet. Whereas it's the same God. He is mocking the same God, including the God that he says he believes in. Because we forget that God is love. And we forget something else. When we say we are created in God's image, what are we talking about? You and I have been talking about consciousness. And I have said, there's only one consciousness. There's only one mind. And we are individual expressions of that consciousness. What is that consciousness? I also call it the ultimate reality. This consciousness that I call the ultimate reality is God. Umvelingangi. I'll come back to Umvelingangi just now. But the ultimate reality, this consciousness, is God. And you are an individual expression of that same ultimate reality. In Hinduism, if you familiarize with the Upanishads, for instance, or Vedanta, there's something that is said which I love. That you are. Very simple. That you are. What is that you are? That you are. Meaning, you are that ultimate reality. Meaning, you are God. And God is you. And another thing I love, my favorite Swami Savapriyananda, quoting an older Swami, says, this older Swami said, spirituality is a manifestation of the divinity you already have. Let me repeat. Spirituality is a manifestation of the divinity you already have. Spirituality is a manifestation of the divinity that is already where? Within you.
Within.
Isn't that beautiful?
So beautiful.
Yes. In short, Mtakwanda, if spirituality is a manifestation of
The
the divinity that is already within you, no one can take away that quality from you. Because to take away that quality is to take away God from yourself. And therefore, it is to take away God from God. Because, as I said, the ultimate reality is God. Coming back to Umvelingange. Umvelingange in Zulu is, some people say, that which was there before everything else. I don't like that definition, by the way. Because for me, God, Umvelingange, is that which was there before anything was. So Umvelingange was not there first. Umvelingange is that which was there before anything was. Before anything was. That is Umvelingange. Which means God was before anything was. Which means God is simple. God is, God was, has always been, will always be. So when you use the language of saying God is Alpha and Omega, I don't believe that. God is neither Alpha nor Omega. Because God was before the beginning was. So God is not Alpha.
Yeah.
Because God came before Alpha.
Alpha.
So God was before Alpha was. God is not Omega. God has no beginning.
Yeah.
God has no ending. God is, was, has always been, will always be. No Alpha, no Omega, no beginning, no end.
Have you opened a room, perhaps, that in your evolution, you'll get to a space where there's absolute, your intellectuality yields to your belief?
It's a blessing I pray for. Because to reach that point one day would be such a blessing. To reach that point while I'm still alive in this body, even more. Can you imagine reaching that point of enlightenment while you're still alive as this body? That would be such a blessing. So my prayer is to reach that level of enlightenment while I'm still here as a body. If not, at some point in the evolution of my eternal life. It doesn't matter when, as long as I reach that point, which is a huge blessing. Now, we said God is love. Let me add, God is unity. And the highest form of unity that we will experience is unity with God. When we are one with God and God is one with us. Now, let me say this. We don't know what is going to happen after the death of the body. We don't know. Maybe at this point I must say something else. Anyone who says they know God is lying. But I will forgive them.
Yeah.
Because some are lying in good faith. In other words, they are lying because we don't know better. They are not lying deliberately. We don't know God.
What's your idea of one true God?
One to God. Say more.
The Almighty.
Well, I've already said God is the ultimate reality. There's nothing higher, as you yourself said. God is the ultimate reality. Now, I believe that when the body dies, something beautiful will happen. Now, I believe something else. That when you die, you are going to be surprised. Because what will follow will be nothing like the things you have come to believe. The things you are taught by Christianity and other religions, by Ubungoma and other spiritual traditions. What will follow after the death of the body will surprise you. It will be nothing like any of the things you've been taught, like any of the things you believe. But it will be beautiful. Because what we are going to experience after the death of the body is this unity. Unity with God. When you are one with God and God is one with us. isn't that something to look forward to?
Gogo, I think this should be part 1 of the God series.
Yes.
Please, let's do part 2 in the coming future.
We shall.
Because I want us to keep this conversation as pure as it is. But for now, I think this is what our viewers
Yes.
should digest, can provoke them, but we're going to have part 2. I don't want to run over so many concepts on God, but for now, let's stop here and then we continue, because there are many questions. But it has been a very, very, very beautiful conversation.
Thabang. And let's end, as we sometimes do, with an apology. The apology being, once again, I did not mean, if I did offend you, I did not mean to offend.
Yeah.
I do hope that one of the things I've achieved is to make those who are watching to look at this question in a different way. In short, my aim is that we must look at this question in more than one way. I hope we have achieved that.
Indeed, I hope so, Gogo. In the coming series, as we link to God, we'll talk about birth, death.
Yes.
All these questions revolve around our understanding of God.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's how we come to the end of this conversation. Please do us a big favor. Subscribe to our channel. When the channel grows, we're able to attract and to sustain such high-level conversations and such high-level guests. On YouTube, Max Network. I am Max. Kamako.